Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out to hear about this extremely important issue. I'm happy to see all elements of California's education community gathered here today in a show of force and in a show of unity to denounce the unacceptable stripping of $3.9 billion from our public schools. And it's not just the $3.9 billion, even though that's a tremendous amount of money. What we're confronting is an existential threat to the way that we fund public schools here in California. For more than 40 years, voter-approved, constitutionally enshrined Proposition 98 has provided stability to our public school funding and a degree of predictability. And now that safety net is being torn apart by this proposal from the administration to withhold $3.9 billion. That is resources that our kids won't have, and those are opportunities they will never receive. A dollar delayed is a dollar denied, and our kids need every resource they can get to have the best chance at success in school, in career, and in civic life. Today, we have members from every statewide education association gathered here because they know how critical this is to the success of our kids. So with no further ado, allow me to introduce ACSA President Darrell Camp. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy. Like Troy said, I'm ACSA, the Association of California School Administrators President, Darrell Camp. I'm also the superintendent in the San Lorenzo Unified School District in Alameda County. Today, the education community is united around a simple message. California must fund education. Education investments are not just numbers on a spreadsheet. These are real decisions that impact our communities every single day. Our educators and school leaders have spent the last several years managing through the pandemic recovery, staffing shortages, rising costs, and the expiration of one-time state and federal dollars. This has created instability and uncertainty in future budgets. Continuing to withhold Proposition 98 funding not only adds to that instability, but forces districts to plan budgets without having the full picture. And without having the full picture, districts are forced to make tough decisions about people, programs, and services that serve our students. This means that fewer adults are in the classroom. There's less individualized support for students, and reduced access to counselors, mental health services, and other supports that families rely on. For students, this will mean they will feel less supported, less connected, and less prepared academically and socially. The decisions made in the coming weeks will shape the educational opportunities available to students. The fact that teachers, classified employees, administrators, and parents are standing together today speaks to the seriousness of this moment and the importance of fully funding public education. That is why we are not only calling on the state Senate and Assembly to hold the line, reject the governor's withholding, and to fully fund California schools. But to the governor, we would say this: your administration, this administration, has made significant investments in TK through 12 schools over the last several years, and fully funding Proposition 98 is critically important to sustain those programs and investments. California students deserve a budget that fully invests in their success, their opportunities, and their futures. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Erica Jones, and I'm here on behalf of more than 300,000 California educators as the Secretary-Treasurer for California Teachers Association. As an elementary teacher, I want to acknowledge the magnitude of this moment. Just 2 weeks ago, representatives from 3 of the largest school districts here in California, Los Angeles, Oakland, and Sacramento, stood in unity at the Capitol to urge state leaders to fully fund our public schools. District officials, educator union leaders, school board members, showing this issue has widespread support at the local levels and highlighting the urgency of fully funding Prop 98 and having wall-to-wall labor management partnerships across California's public schools at every level here, advocating for our 5.7 million students. California's public schools are responsible for educating the future of this state. 1 out of every 8 children attending public schools in the US does so in California. Students who, for the last 3 years, have seen billions diverted away from their schools, leaving classrooms destabilized, overcrowded, and under-resourced. Withholding from Prop 98 leaves local communities bearing the weight of the uncertainty when additional funding isn't immediately available. That's why voters passed Prop 98. To guarantee those students get the level of education they deserve, Prop 98 is a minimum guarantee. It's the floor. As the 4th largest economy in the world, California leadership should be striving to give students more than the bare minimum, let alone dipping into that minimum to cover budget shortfalls. There are clearly documented consequences to underfunding public schools, generational consequences. I'm one of those teachers who would receive a pink slip in March due to the underfunding of public schools. If state leadership cares about the future of California, they must stop diverting constitutionally guaranteed funding away from public schools. From fully funding Prop 98 to closing corporate tax loopholes that would result in billions more for public school classrooms, what would it look like if California's leadership promised to prioritize having students learn in fully resourced classrooms? Instead of seeing that promise delivered, we have to contend with realities like fighting to extend Prop 55, if left to expire, would leave 1 in 6 educators losing their jobs, while the wealthy get yet another tax break. California students should be able to dream big and have the classroom resources to achieve those dreams, not worry about whether they'll have a seat in their class or if their favorite teacher is going to be there the next year because of looming budget cuts. While progress has been made, and the governors may revise, toward closing funding gaps in areas like pregnancy leave for educators, special education, community schools, and LCFF funding, there is still work to be done, because our students can't wait for safe, stable, fully funded schools they deserve.
Good morning. I'm Tim Heyer, Tulare County Superintendent of Schools, where I proudly serve nearly 100,000 students across 43 school districts and 21 charter schools. As a county superintendent, one of my most important roles is to support and oversee the fiscal health of the LEAs in Tulare County. The proposal to withhold nearly $4 billion of California's schools will result in real and immediate consequences for districts and students across our state. For Tulare County alone, we estimate this withholding represents approximately $64 million that our districts cannot reliably plan on to use for services and programs for students. What our districts need, what every district in the state needs, is stable, ongoing funding that they can count on when they build their budgets to best serve our students. For example, when the state withholds ongoing Proposition 98 funding in this way, districts are forced to compromise services and programs for students. This fiscal maneuver creates an uncertain promise of future repayments of dollars that are statutorily promised to students today in California. If this proposal is approved, districts will be forced to budget more cautiously, which means withholding potential hiring of students to provide, or staff to provide services to students, delaying maintenance projects, and not expanding career pathways, even though our students need and deserve those investments. To be fair, I understand the state's significant fiscal pressure on the non-Prop 98 side of the budget. In Tulare County, 1 in 5 of our residents lives in poverty, and that's well above the state average. Our families depend on Medi-Cal, on CalFresh, on the very services funded by the other side of the ledger. So I am sympathetic to the fact that there's not a simple solution to meet the full needs of our students and their families. However, as the county superintendent, it is my job to ensure that our LEAs maintain a balanced budget while meeting the needs of their students and the demands of the state. It is my expectation that the governor and the legislature find a solution that does the same. Balance the budget and fully fund Prop 98 as approved by the people of California. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ron Walker, and I'm proud to be here on behalf of the California School Employees Association, representing more than 250,000 classified staff and employees. Our students, the students we serve in public schools and county offices of education and community colleges across California. CSEA is here today because the May revise still withholds $3.9 billion in constitutionally owned Prop 98 funding from California schools and community colleges. That money belongs in our schools now, and it should be used to support students, protect services, stabilize staffing, and strengthen the public education system our communities depend on. For classified employees, these investments are not abstract. Our members are the people who make these programs and work every day. They support the students in the classrooms, prepare the meals, serve meals, drive buses, keep campuses clean and safe, help families in school offices, maintain technology systems, and provide so many essential services to our students. When funding is delayed or uncertain, those services are often among the first to be reduced. Districts put off restoring services. They leave critical positions vacant or postpone important improvements. And too often, classified employees are asked to do more with less, while students lose access to the support they dearly need. CSEA is concerned that this proposal just kicks the can down the road. The promise that the $3.9 billion will be repaid next spring forces schools to rely on future revenue projections when the money is already constitutionally owned. Our students, our schools, and our members need stability now. That is why CSEA stands with our education coalition partners in urging the legislature to reject the $3.9 billion withholding, because California students need stability, our schools need stability, and classified employees need the resources and the consistency necessary to keep our schools running and students support. CSEA urges the legislature to fully fund Proposition 98 and reject the proposed $3.9 billion delay. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Tasha Davenport, the CEO of the California Association of School Business Officials, also known as CASBO. We've established that we're here today because of the $3.9 billion constitutionally guaranteed school funding that is proposed to be withheld from our California students. Proposition 98 was passed in California by our voters to ensure that education funding could not be traded away during difficult budget years. Prop 98 is unambiguous. It is a guarantee. It is the law. It is not a suggestion. CASBO represents 30,000 school business professionals who manage the district budgets across California. Our members see how every budget decision plays out in the classrooms, the campuses, and in our communities. And every dollar withheld has a consequence for our students. California has made progress in our per student investment. It's real progress, and we acknowledge that. But a record number means little without context. It costs consumers in California more to live than the rest of the nation. To put that in context, housing in California runs nearly double the national average. On top of that, if you want to have lights on, there's another 24% above the national average. In total, it is 42% more expensive to live and be in California than it is the rest of the nation. So every dollar that we send to a California classroom has to stretch further than anywhere else in the United States. Funding increases have not kept pace with the real cost of educating a student in this state. And when you adjust for that reality, California's per pupil investment lands us right at the national average. I think we can agree that is not the ceiling that our state, with 5.7 million students and the world's 5th largest economy, should accept. $3.9 billion translates to one number that every school business official in this state immediately understands. That is $640 per student. $640 per student is a reading specialist. It is a counselor. It is the difference between a balanced budget and a deficit plan for districts that are already operating in the most expensive state in the nation. Every dollar of Prop 98 funding withheld is a dollar that does not reach a classroom, a student, or a community that has already earned that dollar. By withholding Proposition 98 funding as a means to balance our budget, the state is taking away opportunity from the students who have already earned it. We call on the California Legislature to reject the governor's proposal and honor Proposition 98. Stop making our students wait for what is already theirs. Thank you.
I'm Heather Ippolito, president of California State PTA, representing over 500,000 parents, caregivers, and community members who show up every single day for California's public school children. I'm not here today as an administrator or a policymaker. I'm here as a volunteer, a parent who, like every California PTA leader at every level, receives no paycheck for this work. We show up because our mission demands it, to positively impact the lives of all children, youth, and families. Some in Sacramento are calling the May revise withholding of $3.9 billion in Proposition 98 funds a budget maneuver. California State PTA calls it what it is: a broken promise to California's public school children. That maneuver translates to $643 stripped from every student in California. Not next year, not someday, in the budget year that begins 10 weeks from now. Proposition 98 is not a suggestion. California voters wrote it into our Constitution because they understood something fundamental. Public schools are where California children learn to become California's future. And that's worth protecting. Here is what makes this withholding so personal for California's families. Every dollar withheld is a school counselor our kids won't see. It's a special education service delayed. It's an overcrowded classroom where one teacher is doing the work of two. California's public schools are already losing students, nearly 75,000 this year alone, compounding the financial pressure on every district in the state. Budgets don't lie, and every budget is a choice. This one tells California's children that they can wait while $3.9 billion stays in Sacramento. And parents, educators, and administrators are left picking up the slack for what the state is constitutionally required to provide. California State PTA members sit at kitchen tables, not budget tables. Our kids cannot vote, they cannot lobby, but they are living right now in the gap between a record investment and a record shortfall. Governor Newsom, members of the legislature, the June 15th deadline is approaching. California's families are watching, and our children don't deserve an IOU or a promissory note. Our children, our schools, and our families are counting on you to release these funds now. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Heather. And before I get started, I just want to acknowledge looking out across the Capitol lawn and seeing all our public school children here to learn how government works in California. So it's very fitting that we're here this morning. My name is Dr. Deborah Shade. I'm the president of the California School Board Association. I stand here today representing 5,000 elected school board members across California. So good morning, and thank you to our partners in the Ed Coalition for engaging in the show of unity. We stand together today in defense of California's students and the promise voters made to public schools through Proposition 98. California voters passed Proposition 98 to make education funding less volatile and to provide a safety net for public schools in challenging fiscal times. The statutes for Prop 98 funding are enshrined in the state constitution. Prop 98 is a matter of law, not a suggestion that can be discarded when it becomes inconvenient for policymakers. Yet, for the third consecutive year in a row, the administration has proposed manipulating the Proposition 98 minimum funding guarantee instead of fully honoring it. This year, the governor proposes withholding $3.9 billion owed to California schools, equivalent to roughly $640 per student. That dollar figure comes with a real cost for our schools. It means larger class sizes. It means fewer teachers in the classroom. It means fewer counselors and instructional aides supporting students. And it means reduced mental health and student support services. To make the best decision for kids, school boards need funding transparency. But this withholding introduces uncertainty for boards and instability for kids. As school board members who have to make tough budget decisions, the administration's withholding forces us into terrible choices that result in fewer opportunities for students who already face enormous challenges. And while the governor points to additional investment in other areas of education, those investments do not make up for undermining Proposition 98 itself, nor do they justify treating a voter-approved constitutional guarantee as optional or discretionary. An IOU is not a guarantee. It's called the Prop 98 guarantee for a reason. And if you can't rely on the funding, it is not by definition a guarantee. A protocol exists in statute to modify the Prop 98 guarantee in time of need. So there is no reason, and let me repeat, no reason for the administration to sidestep the law and undermine Prop 98 with an end around of the legally established process. Because once we open the door to the idea that Proposition 98 can be manipulated whenever the state faces fiscal pressure, we fundamentally weaken the protections voters deliberately put in place for California students. CSBA is already engaged in litigation over an earlier Proposition 98 withholding proposal because we believe these actions violate both the spirit and the intent of the law. And if this new manipulation becomes part of the final budget, we will likely file an additional suit. But let me be clear, we do not want to litigate. We want the governor and the legislature to do the right thing. Reject this withholding. Restore the full funding owed to schools. protect Proposition 98, and honor the constitutional commitment California voters made to public education. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Tristan Brown. I am the Legislative Director of the California Federation of Teachers. We are a union of educators and classified school employees. We represent over 120,000 members that work in the early childhood education all the way through our institutions of higher education. And so we take a wide-angle lens of the impacts that this state budget proposal has on our public education system. I'd like to recognize the unity as all of the members of the Education Coalition are here to speak to you today, unified against this proposal. And our message is clear. The governor and the legislature must keep their promise to the students of California and fully fund Proposition 98. Any delay in funding will hurt our kids, and that is unacceptable. Every day, our students and their families face increasing hardship. Rising food and gas costs, ballooning electric bills, and high healthcare costs, just to name a few. And families we serve are struggling and facing a lot of uncertainty and a lot of pain. And in the building behind me, it's often debated whether or not trickle-down economics works. Let me tell you how $3.9 billion trickles down to these families. It trickles down when a student is sick on campus and goes to an empty nursing office. It trickles down when a new reader wants to go to the library and discover the wonderful world of literature, only to find no librarian is able to be hired. It trickles down to a cafeteria that looks more like an I Love Lucy episode because we can't afford to hire enough classified employees to make sure we don't make mistakes in serving the nutritious food that our students need to learn. It trickles down in ways that only really appears in one way. Cuts hurt kids. And despite $25 billion in additional revenue from earlier projections, the number of people up here in Sacramento are justifying this funding delay by warning of an uncertain budget future. Every future is uncertain. It's up to true, genuine leadership to figure out how to navigate the uncertainty in a way that does not hurt our students. Instead of having the courage to look the powerful and the wealthy in the eye and ask more from them, they're looking to our children in the eye and saying, "We know what's best for you, you're just going to have to wait." And this is absolutely unacceptable. Proposition 98 was passed by the voters in 1988. It is part of the California Constitution. It is a binding promise, and our students and our schools, and it must be kept intact. So to the governor and the state legislature, I say, keep your promise. Fully fund our schools, invest in our students, invest in their success, and invest in our future. Thank you.
So we've heard from all parts of the education community today: labor, teachers, classified staff, administration, governance, and that represents how the governor and the administration have fallen down on their promise to support public schools and the 5.7 million students that we serve. I appreciate our speakers underscoring the urgency of what's happening and the moral case for resisting this $3.9 billion withholding, and more fundamentally, defaulting on the promise of stable funding for public schools. We will always continue to fight against that. And there's no amount of dollar, not even one single dollar of withholding that would be acceptable, because that is a violation of what the voters approved and what's stated in the Constitution. Now that we're at the conclusion of the press conference, if anyone from the media would like to ask questions, we'd be happy to take them. So the governor has done a number of good things in the budget which are undermined by this withholding, but I will defer to some of our officers to talk about the specifics.
Again, Tim Heyer, Tulare County Superintendent of Schools. I think the proposal to increase the discretionary block grant is certainly something that I think school board association members, teachers, educators across the board appreciate the flexibility to meet the needs of the individual students in each of their communities because it varies across the state. Additionally to that, the continued funding of the Community Schools Partnership Grant, where we are bringing additional mental health services through schools for kids to meet the mental health needs of our students, are also an appreciated investment. And I would also defer to any of the other folks here to share their opinions, but those are the two big ones that come to mind for me right away.
Hi, Tasha Davenport. I would just add special education is getting a well-deserved investment that has not been there for a very long time. So special education is also a win in the budget proposal.
Well, I'm going to just make a quick comment about that, and maybe some of my colleagues have more. Again, Dr. Deborah Shea, California School Board Association. I think the reason why we're here is because what the voters wanted was school districts to have stable, predictable funding. And although we're very, you've heard that many of us have seen some movement in the budget that is, supporting our programs in education. The reason why we're here today is because dismantling, withholding, maneuvering, whatever you want to call it, of a voter-approved guarantee for baseline funding for education in California, that's where the problem is. Because if we knew that was coming, we could budget, and then anything else would be a wonderful thing. But we're fighting for that base.
All right, I think that brings the event to a close. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you. Okay, guys, can you stay for a photo, please? Thank you. Erica. Oh, Erica. Oh, she's so fast.